Listener-supported Catholic 540 Divine Mercy Radio presents Diving In with Deacon. Ever wonder how and why someone becomes a deacon? Or what roles deacons assist with on a daily basis? Here, we uncover all the great things these men do for our church.
You may see him in your parish assisting the priest at the altar, or witnessing a marriage, or distributing communion to the faithful. He is a deacon, and this is Diving In with Deacon. I am your host, Mark Baratta. Our guest today is a fascinating combination of experiences, law enforcement, and faith leadership, Deacon David Wulff of St. Michael the Archangel in Cary. Deacon, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoy being able to talk about my vocations.
You retired with over 32 years of police service. That is no small accomplishment. What drew you to that line of work in the first place?
When I was young, one of my first jobs was working at a gas station, and it was a place where the police hung out. And I had an idea what a police officer was, but until I actually got to meet some of these guys and find out, what they actually did and how they actually reacted with people and the kindness that they had in their lives, it drew me closer and closer to it. So I decided to do that for a profession.
You were living your faith in a job that can be incredibly intense. How did your Catholic faith influence the way you approached your role on the police force?
Well, it was interesting when I decided to do that. The first person that said something to me about it was my mother, who said, "How can you justify judging people for a living?" And I said, well, that's a good question. And so the more I thought about it, the more I got into it and dived into it, it's not my judgment. It's their decisions that cause them to do the things they do. So I decided that it was a good avenue for me to go in and be able to help people. And that's what it really was. Every day that I worked was being in a position to be able to help others.
How did you maintain your moral and spiritual compass in a profession that often exposes people to violence and injustice?
It actually was very easy, having that moral compass and being able to pray. There was a lot of prayer going on in those police cars, or in my police car at the very least. So it helps a lot.
What was the most spiritually challenging moment during your time in law enforcement?
Well, I've thought about this a lot because I had an experience with a gentleman that I was trying to place into custody that's the closest I've ever been to evil in my life. And I know it wasn't that person that I was dealing with. It was pure evil that I was dealing with. For the most part, people are just making mistakes, doing the wrong thing, making bad decisions. But sometimes there's more to it than that, and that was an experience that I'll never forget.
It seems like more and more these days, officers serving warrants are under particular duress, not knowing what kind of situation they may be putting themselves in.
Well, that's absolutely the case with everything we do. It's you don't know from day to day, from moment to moment, what's going to happen and how things are going to turn out. And so it's a lot of spirituality that goes into that line of work.
In a positive vein, what was your most rewarding moment during your time in law enforcement?
I've delivered 2 babies, so that was very positive, having absolutely no idea what to do. Very fortunate in both situations. The mothers had a lot more experience with it than I did and kind of guided me through what I was supposed to do. But both of them were in snowstorms, and the ambulance couldn't get to us and expediently, so to be able to get those babies delivered. So it was me.
You mentioned before we started the interview that you had spent some time as an officer in Cleveland. You mentioned the snow. Was that where you delivered the babies?
That's exactly where it was, in a little area outside of Cleveland called Twinsburg Township, which is where I was a police officer. And I was a deputy sheriff there, and then we started a police department, and I delivered a baby with both agencies in that same area. Yeah.
It sounds like that was early on in your career as well.
Very much so. I was only in my 20s, so yeah.
Can you share a moment where you truly felt God's presence while on duty?
I think in those moments, being able to see in the moments of delivering the babies, being able to see everything that comes about in life, the fear, the emotion, and the love that took place, I would say very strong.
How ironic do you find it that St. Michael the Archangel is the patron saint of law enforcement, and you serve at St. Michael the Archangel Church? Well,
it was funny when I moved to Cary. Well, not when I moved to Cary. When I had my interview with the Cary Police Department, I was staying at a residence and drove from there to the police department and drove right past St. Michael the Archangel Catholic Church. And I was like, I'm going to end up here. And it was one of those moments that I don't believe in coincidences, and I don't think that was a coincidence. Yeah.
Were there specific prayers or devotions you found particularly grounding during your time with the Cary Police Department? As you mentioned, there was a lot of prayer going on in your patrol car.
Just simply words. It wasn't necessarily specific prayers. Always been devoted to the rosary, but in those moments, there often isn't a lot of time. So it's just like, God be with me. And in my later life, it became the simple divine mercy piece of Jesus, I trust in you. But early on, it was basically conversations with God personally.
You mentioned you got your start up in Ohio. What transpired to bring you to Cary back in the 80s?
Snow. I was really tired of it, and some family members had moved down here, and we came to visit them in February, and went to the beach and laid out on the beach like stupid Northerners do when we come down to 60-degree weather and sun. And I was like, why am I up here? Why am I in all this snow when I can work here? There was not very much growth in the Cleveland area as far as police departments go, so I saw and heard of everything that was going to happen in Cary. And so when I came here, there was 21 police officers and 20-some thousand people in town. When I retired, it was closer to 150,000 people with 200 police officers. So I saw that growth, I felt that growth, and that growth helped me in my career to go through the ranks.
Yeah, I found the list of job titles you've accumulated during your time with the Cary Police Department to be outstanding. Certainly worthy of mention. That said, I'd like to take a moment to list them for our listeners, just to give them an idea of your involvement, as you held every major leadership position. When you retired, you were the Service Bureau Commander, where you oversaw the Criminal Investigations Division, the Emergency Communications Center, the Traffic Safety Team, the Impact Team, Records, Accreditation, and Animal Control. You previously served as Criminal Investigations Division Commander, Field Operations Division Commander, Crisis Negotiations Team Commander, Training Director, Watch Commander, Community Services Officer, Firearms Instructor, DARE Officer, and Patrol Officer. And while working in those roles, you also had the opportunity to develop the position of Community Services Officer and Training Director. And you also developed the Cary Police Department Citizen Police Academy and coordinated the construction of the Cary Police Department Firearms Training Center. All the while, as you mentioned, the population of Cary grew by almost 500%. One could probably safely state that you helped build the department from the ground up.
Well, not alone. There was a lot of help in all those things, and a lot of divine intervention that took place as well. So it was a great career. I would not trade it for anything. I know a lot of people today are not going into law enforcement, but it was probably one of the best things I ever did in my life.
And you still maintain an active relationship with the Cary Police Department as chaplain. How frequently do you find yourself providing spiritual guidance and emotional support?
Quite often, at least weekly. I meet with various officers that want to meet with me, or I just go up to the department and just wander around and talk to people and see how things are going. And so it's very ecumenical, because there's a handful of Catholics there, and I know most of those, but I don't only minister to them, and I'm a minister to anybody that's there and anything that they need. So, so it's a great relationship.
And there is a Mass held every year at St. Michael, is there not?
We don't do a Mass. We do morning prayer. And we get together for morning prayer and then lunch afterwards. We do that on the Feast of St. Michael because of the relationship between St. Michael and law enforcement.
St. Michael was just recently appointed a new pastor last year, Father Scott McHugh. How has that transition gone?
Oh, fantastic. He's a great leader, good man. I worked with him. I do a lot for the diocese on the security level. And so one of the things that I did was the security program and set up for the Eucharistic Congress. And Father Scott was in charge of that. And so I worked with him very closely with that. And that was before he came to St. Michael's. So so I had a good relationship with him. But when he came to St. Michael, it was pretty smooth
Seamless.
and fluid. Yeah. Seamless is a good way to put it. Yeah.
In addition to being a deacon, you are also a high-ranking member of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jesus, a Knight Commander with Star. For the uninitiated, talk about the order and your involvement.
So it's the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem, so is the official title. Monsignor Tim O'Connor was the pastor of St. Michael years ago, and he brought me into the order. It's not something you can join. It's something you have to be invited into. And so I met him. I met Monsignor Tim, and he took a liking to me. He had a lot of family in law enforcement, so he ended up inviting me into the order. The idea is back in 1011 A.D., the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre were sent to Jerusalem to protect the Christians in the Holy Land and the holy sites in the Holy Land. And that was a fighting element that they had to oppose foes and so on. Today, we get together and pray. We get together once a year as a group for the Mid-Atlantic Lieutenancy, which is from Washington, D.C., over to Tennessee and on down. And we pray for all those things, and we make pilgrimages to the Holy Land and so on and so forth, and make a lot of donations to keep things going there in the Holy Land. Our group, in particular, has built an orphanage, a nursing school, a bunch of different things over in the Holy Land. So it's been a very good organization to be involved with. In fact, the group gets together once a year for an investiture where we bring new people in. And next year, in 2026, the investiture will take place in Raleigh at the Holy Name of Jesus Cathedral.
You're also a fourth degree Knights of Columbus. What led you to join, and why did you pursue the fourth degree?
I think because my father was a active member in the Knights of Columbus, and he had a lot of very positive things in his life because of them. And so when it was my turn to step up to the plate, there you go. So I'm going to become a Knight. Fourth degree, the patriotic arm was probably the biggest reason to go that direction. I'm also one that I don't like to stop in the middle of something. So I'm going to finish and go as far as I can go with them. Now, I am not as active as I would like to be because I'm active in so many other things. But when they need me, I'm there for them. And I do a lot with them with my charity that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
Yes, we will. As if your resume wasn't already impressive enough, you teach. You received a bachelor's degree from Campbell University and a master's degree from Methodist University. Currently, as I understand, you teach criminal justice and Homeland Security, and the undergraduate degree program at Campbell, and a media course in the Master of Justice Administration program at Methodist. How did all that come to fruition?
One of my sergeants, when I was in investigations, was talking about what he was going to do when he retired. And he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to become a college professor, get my master's degree, become a college professor, and travel and have my laptop and do all my work from my laptop. And I thought, that's not a bad idea. I think I'll do that. So I did that. He never did, which is kind of funny, but it was a great thing to do. It was really good for the agency too, because I was the first one in our command staff to go and get a graduate degree. And I knew that I wasn't going to do it to try to go any higher in the agency because I was getting close to retirement. But a bunch of the other command staff guys ended up getting their masters, and then one of them went on to become the chief of police there. So it helped all the way around. But it also then gave me aspirations to teach college. I taught in the police department a lot. I enjoy teaching. So being able to take that to the next level and be able to help with the future has been a great thing.
Natural progression.
The master's level course that I taught is no longer being offered, so I don't teach that any longer. I'm just at Campbell.
As far as you know, have any of the graduates of your classes ended up in law enforcement?
Oh, lots of them. Yeah, lots of them. There's at least 2 or 3 carry officers that took classes with me.
Cool. You also founded a local charity in 2016, St. Lawrence Treasure. Not many people start their own charity. Talk about your motivation behind its formation.
So one of my friends from the department decided he wanted to be an entrepreneur, so he started a landscaping business. And when he was doing his work, he stopped at a Bojangles, and a lady backed into him, cut off his leg. So 10 years later, and I've been in touch with him and friends with him, and 10 years later, he put a picture on Facebook of his wheelchair, and it was all beat up, and he's like, does anybody have one of these in their garage, and would they like to donate it for the parts so I can fix mine back up again? And I was like, how can I help this guy? And I was like, so I called him up. I said, I don't even know what a wheelchair costs. What does it cost? And he told me about $250. So I said, I'm just going to send you $250. Go buy yourself a wheelchair. Just don't spread it around and tell people. And it felt really good to be able to do that. And it was that, it felt like God had his hand in that. So I was a regular 7 a.m. mass goer at the time. And Father Ryan Elder, who's now in Hillsborough, was doing the mass that morning at St. Michael. And I said, hey, I got this idea. Let's go get a cup of coffee and talk about it. And so we went and had a cup of coffee. And I said, I think this might be something. People trust me. They like me. I don't know why, but they do. And if I didn't have that $250 to buy that wheelchair, I could have sent an email out to my friends and said, help me out with this. And I would have gotten it. So how do I leverage that into something positive? And so we talked about it. And I've developed this email group of people. And when I have a situation come up, I put it out to the group. I try to keep some money around so I can fix it immediately if I need to. But it's designed for immediate needs. Somebody has a car breakdown or something. It's people that don't fit into the normal charities. They can't go to Red Cross for this. They can't go to whatever. They can't go to the church for this. And there's no time. It needs to be done now. So I thought, well, it's a good thing to get started. We can try that and see where it goes. So I started it, made it a full 501c3. The day that Father Ryan and I got together for coffee happened to be the Feast of St. Lawrence. St. Lawrence happened to be a deacon. I wasn't a deacon at the time, but it was about 3 years before I was ordained, but I was in the program. And it's funny because of that, people think that some of my Protestant friends are like, well, you only did that because you had to, because you're in deacon school. It's like, no, there's nothing to do with that. But to date, I've given away about $500,000. And so it's been very good. Everything I've tried to help people with, I've been able to help. One of the most recent ones was a lady that was a victim of domestic violence and had $3,000 worth of damage to her face and her teeth. And so it was all dental work. And so we were able to pay for that.
You've also gone international. How did St. Lawrence Treasure become involved with the Afghan Scouts of Durham?
Well, the gentleman who's kind of running that charity, so to speak, was in my deacon school. And so Kevin Sullivan, Deacon Kevin Sullivan, and he's at the Newman Center there in Chapel Hill. And Kevin basically adopted, not truly adopted, but brought into Afghan children in the Scouts and needed some help with that. And so I worked with him on that with his finances because I'm a 501c3 and people can donate through me. And so I give him some advice and I help him with the finances and so on.
If someone wanted to make a tax-deductible contribution to your charity, how would they go about doing so?
Just contact me, and I only do it through checks or through some online transfers.
I know the website is sltreasure.org.
Correct.
If somebody wanted to check it out.
Yes.
I can't imagine you have much free time, but when you do, what do you like to do to relax and unwind?
Travel. My wife and I love to travel, and so we do a lot of that. Some of it being pilgrimages. We did the Footsteps of St. Paul, and we did the Fatima and Lourdes just before the Footsteps of St. Paul, and then we've been to Israel as well. And so we love pilgrimages, but we also just love to travel. This year we're going to do Alaska, so that's going to be great, and so on.
You retired on November 1st, 2011, All Saints Day. In 2011, November 1st was a Tuesday. I'm curious if that was a conscious decision.
No, it wasn't a conscious decision. It just happened to be when your time is up, your time is up. So October 31st was my last day of work, and so my first official day of retirement was November 1st. So kind of in the government realm, it's usually always the last day of the month that you work.
But we don't believe in coincidences, do we?
We don't believe in coincidences, no.
After retirement, however, you came out of retirement to serve as interim police chief with the Morrisville Police Department. What led to that move? So
I was captain with Morrisville to help them. There was just two captains that ran the department at the time. I was not willing to is probably strong. I was not ready to give up my badge, so to speak. So after I retired, I went to the Morrisville Police Department. The chief was Ira Jones at the time, was a good friend of mine, and he brought me on as a reserve police officer. So I worked for him for free, did some firearms training for them, and so on. And then when he left to go for other things, they needed time to be able to bring a police chief in, and so I helped with that.
Familiarity, it was a natural fit.
It was a natural fit. So and I helped them make the decision about who they chose and so on and so forth.
At what point did you feel the call to become a deacon? Was it something you always felt brewing even while working in law enforcement?
It started in law enforcement, but it's not something that I always felt the desire for. But when I rose to the rank of major in the department, I took over the chaplain program that we had at the police department. And it was really poorly being done at the time. So that was really good English there, wasn't it? It wasn't being run very well. And so when I took it over, I started looking at it. I brought some men in as chaplains, and I started thinking about it. And I was like, this is something I could do to give back to the Cary Police Department. How do I do that? How do I offer myself as a chaplain without being a minister of any kind? The Catholic Church, the only choice for a married man was to become a deacon. So I was like, I'll do that. Well, then I started looking into it, and it's like a year of discernment and 6 years of training. It's like, wow, that's a commitment to do this little volunteer gig at the police department. And so I kind of looked at it like I looked at a lot of major crimes. So you try to prove, like you have a homicide, the first thing you'd look at is the husband, right? So because the husband always is the one that does it. Well, not always. So you've got the officer, the detective that's working in that direction but you also have a group of officers that are working to prove that he didn't do it. So I always kind of look at things, and I still look at things that way, is why shouldn't I do this? So I kept thinking about, well, why shouldn't I do this? I want to be a chaplain, but if I become a deacon, now I'm going to be on the altar. I'm going to have to write homilies. I'm going to have to counsel people. There's all these things I'm going to have to do. Well, why shouldn't I do that? So I talked to my wife about it, talked to priest friends about it, and I could really find no reason. It was really, really funny. One of my friends at the Cary Police Department a very religious man, Methodist. And I was talking to him one day, and I had just been brought into the equestrian order, and I was thinking about the discernment process of becoming a deacon. And, there was a couple other things that were going on, but the deacon part was a big piece of it. And I was talking to Barry, and I was like, I'm thinking about this stuff. And he goes, well, what's your hesitation? I said, I don't know. He said, do you think you're not worthy? And I said, that's probably it. And he said, well, I'll answer that question for you right now. You're not. And I was like, what? Come on, I thought we were friends. And he's like, no, seriously, he said, nobody's worthy of that. He said, but it needs to be done. It's an important thing. God is looking at you. You need to start opening your eyes and ears and all your senses to God. And there you go. So here I am.
Until recently, you were one of 5, now 4 deacons to serve the large congregation at St. Michael the Archangel. Deacon Glenn Dudak recently petitioned Bishop Zarama to be transferred to Holy Name of Jesus to be closer to his home. Deacon Dave, how will that impact your role, if at all?
It won't impact my role at all. Glenn, great man, love Deacon Glenn, but he has a full-time job. So the deaconing work that he does at St. Michael's, or he did at St. Michael's, was mostly on the weekends. I'm retired. I do a lot, but a lot of what I do is online. A lot of what I do is setting schedules for myself. So I do a lot of work during the week, during the day, at the church. So it's really, it really isn't going to impact that. There's a lot of work there at that church. There's a lot of work. So it just continues. The important part is that I keep my wife involved in my schedule so that she knows that I'm there for her too. So, and not just for the church, but that's an important piece.
There is certainly a lot of change. A new pastor last year, and Father John de Guzman is headed to St. Paul in New Bern, and Father Tom Tully is headed over to St. Michael. In such a large parish as St. Michael the Archangel, what challenges do you and the pastoral staff face in caring for such a big and diverse community?
I think it's just being there for everybody and making people feel welcome. That's one of the most important things. Every Mass, there's somebody there that's new or visiting, or and how do you make sure that you touch them and touch their lives, make sure that they are feeling welcome there? So we want to make sure that we can do that. I don't know if you remember Monsignor Jerry Sherba.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Monsignor Sherba and I were very close. My wife and I were some of his caretakers towards the end of his life, and spent a lot of time with him. One of the things that he famously always said to me was, never say no, always say yes. Now, that's a difficult thing to do because there's so many things that can get in the way. But say somebody comes to you with a difficult situation and it doesn't sound like it's something you can do, you can help them with, you can always do something. So it's like, yeah, we can work on that. It may take you doing this, and this to get us there, but we'll get there and we'll work together to get you there. And so when somebody comes to you with an issue, a problem, a concern, whatever, even a happy event like a wedding, but they've got something in their life that's blocking them from doing it in the Catholic Church, it's not a block. It's just, how can we fix that? What do we have to do to fix that? And so I just love him for bringing that philosophy to me.
In your presence story that's available online, you yourself talked about being intimidated by the sheer number of people when you and your wife Linda first attended St. Michael. What advice can you offer new parishioners joining our ever-growing parishes?
Get involved. Don't just sit in the pews. A parish like St. Michael's, we have 25,000 some registered parishioners. It's huge. You walk in there and, we always sit in the same pews, right? So we know the 5 people that sit around us. But the good thing about that is there are so many other things to do. Knights of Columbus, prayer groups. It was funny. I started going to this 7 a.m. prayer group at the church, and every Mass I would go to, well, there's Bill, there's George, there's Bob. Where if you go to Mass and you're not involved in anything, it's just people that are there. Well, no. Now I've been and prayed with these people and this person, and I know their story, and I know that's his wife that's sitting next to him, and so on and so forth. So getting involved, even if you're in a really, really busy job, a real busy life, kids and everything else, there's so much structure available there at any church. Just get involved, and on a whatever level you can. Even becoming a Eucharistic minister or a lector or something like that, you're getting to know people at the church, you're getting involved in how things work, and it makes a huge population, a huge parish, become so much smaller in a big hurry.
Lastly, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners to know about you, the diaconate, or St. Michael the Archangel Church?
One of the things that, think about and speaking to men at this point, is the diaconate program. A lot of our deacons are in that 60 to 70-year-old range. And so there's going to be retirements and so on, and we need to backfill. We need to fill those more roles. I was talking to Father Michael Burbick one time, and I was saying, we have this many deacons at St. Michael's now. Is there a role? Is there a time when we have enough? And he said, when there is no longer a need in our community, we'll have enough deacons. There will never be a day like that. So more men are necessary to be able to fill those roles, to be able to be very helpful, in our community.
Deacon David Wulff, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom, experience, and faith. As we wrap up this edition of Diving In with Deacon, we're reminded that the diaconate is not just a ministry of service, it's a visible sign of Christ the servant in our world. We thank God for the deacons in our diocese and our lives, and pray for those discerning the sacred vocation. May their witness continue to inspire us all to serve with love. Until next time, I am your host, Mark Baratta. Thank you for listening to Divine Mercy Radio, Catholic 540.